Welcome to the Mullin It Over podcast with Reverend Jack Mullins and Austin Covey. How's it going, everybody? And welcome to another edition of Mullin It Over with
Reverend Jack Mullins.
And myself, Austin Covey. What do we got today, Reverend Jack?
Well, a couple of things. There had been a conversation started regarding a journey from the Garden of Eden through the Garden of Gethsemane and the connection between the two in terms of faith and salvation.
So we're talking about Bible story. We're recording this a week after Easter?
Yeah.
Week and change after Easter, so that's kind of been on the brain lately.
Yeah. And the other conversation was, I
I didn't pull up a computer for us to watch that.
Oh.
I need to go do it.
Well, we can...
Well,
let's try talking about it.
Yeah, well, that's going to be a separate video, and we had talked about it being a separate video anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway,
but conversation regarding the responsibilities of Christians regarding wealth and property ownership, and how that creates problems as well as creates very beneficial opportunities.
Also, maybe they're... What's the right way to word that? The way they personally choose to reframe that to fit their narrative, maybe is the way to word that. I don't know.
Yeah, we had watched a video by a well-known personality that dealt with issues of wealth and faith.
Yes. I would call that person a financial advisor, but I don't actually think that because a financial advisor is like a licensed thing, I think, right? Like you have to be a certified financial advisor or whatever, and I don't think that person...
I don't either. He started with the premise that everything is God's because everything is of God's creation. And the person who was interviewing him, if I recall correctly, said, but you own multiple properties and derive income from those properties and are in fact quite wealthy. And my recollection was, I don't consider that I own anything. It all belongs to God. I am merely the steward.
Right. When I think he started out something, because I think the question was something about greed or something like that. And he started out, I think, with talking about how greed is really a mentality more than an amount. Yeah. And I think there is something to that.
I agree.
But I think he kind of lost me on the...
Yeah.
I saw him in a different video, maybe a couple of days ago, where he was giving a public speech, and he said that the value of their campus, where they have all of their offices or whatever, is something like $500 million.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
And I guess as I look at it, does the possession of wealth indicate greed?
In my opinion, not necessarily.
I agree.
But what I would say is it conveys a level of responsibility when you are the person, because I would say he acquired that level of wealth through giving this advice, right? That's what he does for a business.
Yeah.
And I would say I did not reference the value of their property or his commentary on the value of their property in a sense of saying that he's greedy, but in a sense of saying that I think there's a certain obligation to make sure that you're...
Yeah. It's not what you have or what you have accumulated, depending upon the means by which you accumulated it and how you conduct yourself after you have accumulated. I've known some very, very wealthy individuals who would be slumlords if they could figure out how to do it and stay out of jail.
Yeah.
And not doing anything to benefit anyone other than themselves. I've known others who see it as as a gift from God, which they have a responsibility to use to the betterment of society, humanity, those around them, their churches, their social outreach.
And I just think once you become that prominent, I think the value of what they have built is a demonstration of their prominence. That's a good comparison, I think. I think you have a certain level of responsibility about what you're saying and how you're saying it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I just, I don't know, maybe be cautious isn't the right word, but cognizant of what message you're sending, because it does kind of come across as talking out of both sides of your mouth.
Right. Well, and this is almost going to sound like justification, but, be consistent. If you're going to be a greedy jerk, well, then own it.
Yeah.
Don't pretend you're not. Doesn't make you a good person, but at least you're consistent.
Right.
You're not being hypocritical.
But I do think it's fair. Like when somebody says, "Well, you own a lot," is that greed? It's like, well, I don't. If you give and you do other things, it's like, this is just how I've chosen to build security for my family. It's like, yeah, okay. Like, I don't think that's greed necessarily.
Yeah.
But to say, well, it's not really mine, it's God's, and so I'm not greedy because I'm just a steward. I'm like,
you're getting real close to rationalizing behaviors, and far be it for me to sit this far removed from the individual whom I've never met, never talked to face to face, and try to pass any kind of judgment on him or his attitudes and manner by which he accumulated.
Yeah, I guess my thought on it was less passing judgment and more taking note of a cautionary tale that, well, I mean, we do this. We have a podcast, right? And so he is producing some, I don't know if it's a podcast or TV show or whatever, and he's saying this on the show.
Yeah.
And it is the backslide of social media, right? That everything you say is going to be, like we can say we don't know him, we shouldn't judge him. And I'm not saying we are judging him, but when you put something out there, you should be cognizant of the context in which it can be taken. Does that make sense? Or the out of context in which it can be taken.
And that holds true for us.
Well, that's why I said it's like us, because we have we're doing this too. But, when we try
But we're not getting rich doing it.
Well, but we also try to be cognizant. We're not always, sometimes I say dumb things. It goes with the territory. But, trying to be mindful of, particularly if you're putting your own shorts out, you try to be cognizant of, because it's real easy to get 60 seconds. It's very out of context of a 30-minute show.
Exactly.
So, I don't know. It struck me as interesting, and I was kind of like, I don't know, fingernails on a chalkboard when...
Yeah, and that was my reaction when I heard that segment out of that lengthier interview. It's, I don't know, kind of like you see the mega churches or the huge downtown churches that own several city blocks in downtown Dallas, and you look at that and you think about all of the wealth that is involved. And for some of us, then that goes to, rather than sit as a landlord over those properties, what could be done or what is being done with the income from those properties? Or is it simply making the organization richer?
Yeah. There is a specific church that I'm aware of that's, I won't give the exact street address because it'd be pretty easy to pinpoint who I'm talking about. But they're not in downtown Dallas, but they're in, I guess, what you would call the greater Dallas Loop.
Yeah.
And they're at a very prominent highway intersection, and they have like 2 11 or 12-story office buildings along with this like mega complex and stuff. And it's like, man, I don't know how much that cost, but it took a tremendous amount of money to acquire that physical space. And you do kind of wonder, like, I don't know. I don't know anything about them. I don't know what any of their outreach looks like. But it's sort of, they have big church services. It's kind of like, are you just feeding the machine? Or, I don't know that the church was intended originally to just be this machine that's intended to build itself.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I hear and I read of folks who cry out, tax the churches. Mm-hmm. I understand the frustration behind the statement. Mm-hmm. But I also recognize that the overwhelming majority of churches struggle to get by. Right. Very, very, very few of us have spare cash. Mm-hmm. If we're lucky, we might have a 1 or 2% carryover from one year to the next. We struggle to balance budgets and do so very frugally. Mm-hmm. If you started taxing, small, mid-sized and smaller churches based on their contributions, you'd put them out of business in 1 year, because that would be the margin between solvency and bankruptcy. And churches can go bankrupt.
Yes. We've seen that.
We've seen that all too often.
Yeah, I have that conversation with people too, and they say, "Oh, all these churches are just big and wealthy," and I'm like, "You're looking at, unfortunately, it's the case with anything where the loudest 1% is the one that gets the attention." But when you talk about the churches that people reference when they have that conversation, generally is the, for lack of a better term, mega churches.
Absolutely.
And they exist on a plane that most of us can't even
comprehend.
Yeah. I'm not sure if our entire denomination is as large as some of those churches. Probably is, but when you see those churches that have 20,000 members or something, It's like, holy moly, that's... Yeah.
A reality, though, and I attended a workshop a number of years ago, and they were talking about the dynamic of the quote-unquote mega churches. Mm-hmm. And say, Church A over there boasts 20,000, Church B boasts 25,000, Church C boasts 30. Mm-hmm. 15% of those people are the same people.
They're just going for...
They shift congregations. And the point was, the church typically is not good about creating new Christians.
We just trade them. People will get mad at one place and leave and go to the next one.
Yeah. Now, some denominations have taken that and used that dynamic to grow the denomination and to spread churches. I think others, sometimes I'm concerned that ours, the Disciples of Christ, we have become so focused on mutual understanding and reconciliation. We don't split very often. Yeah. But then again, we lose those opportunities to spread and grow.
So when you were talking about other denominations, you're talking about like when they have a rift, they split and create a separate church within the same group kind of a thing.
Consider the communities, and it can be a community of 25,000, and you're going to have first, second, third, and fourth such and such church.
Yeah, that's true.
And they all were offshoots of a single church, but somebody got mad over some point of interpretation or doctrine, went off to start a new church, and attracted like-minded believers and spread the gospel from that interpretation, and there's nothing wrong with that.
When I think what you said about us, about our denomination being almost too agreeable sometimes, I don't know. I've wondered sometimes if we are, maybe agreeable is not the word that I would use, but I'm trying to figure out a good way to word this. This would not be a personal I don't personally consider this to be a negative, but I've wondered in the framework of growing or attracting new people, if we are a little too broad, because people say, "Oh, what do you stand for?" And it's like, a lot. Yeah. There's certain denominations that it's pretty black and white. If you're here, you believe in this, that, the third. It's very.
And the doctrine within our tradition is the church is outside of the, basic foundational beliefs. You believe in God, you believe in Christ, you believe in the inspiration of Holy Scripture. But the church is not going to tell you what to believe or how to believe it or how to act on that belief individually.
And that's a problem for some people.
I had a good friend, member of a church I served previously. She had grown up in the Roman Catholic tradition. She stayed with our church for 3 or 4 years. Wonderful young lady, developing into a real leader. She came to me and said, "I'm going back to the Catholic Church." I said, "Okay, I hate to hear that selfishly, but can you tell me why?" She said, "I need to know exactly where the church stands. I need to know what the rules are. I need boundaries."
And we don't do that very well. So it's a positive, but it's also...
It's a positive for people who can self-regulate.
Right.
And for people who don't want the responsibility of self-determination. A church that gives them a more clearly defined set of boundaries is more comfortable.
I would say if you're a person who likes to kind of, I don't mean question and, I guess we'll use the word question. I don't know a better way to say it. If you're a person who likes to question and kind of like discuss and dive into, it's a good place to be. If you're not and you just want, what was the saying you said that the Bible says it, something, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, there was an old phrase within the early days of the Christian church that said, "For the Bible speaks, we speak. For the Bible's silent, we are silent."
Yeah, that wasn't the one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
The Bible said it, I believe it.
Yeah.
What is that?
I know anyway. The phrase. I can't call it offhand.
Anyway, basically that, like, if it's written in the Bible, we believe it verbatim. We don't question it, whatever, and that doesn't tend to be our...
No. There will be members within our congregations for whom that's their personal belief, but generally, as you alluded to, the freedom to question and to explore, and as I mentioned in sermon yesterday, a quote from a movie was, "Doubt is what gives faith its texture." There's nothing wrong with doubt. It helps you develop your faith and helps you, it gives it contour, it gives it shape, it gives it texture.
When we see in a lot of contexts where people, a lot of faith contexts where people are dissuaded from doubting or it's viewed as a negative.
Well, and and for those, I don't want to misspeak, but from my perception, those that are authoritarian or doctrinal in nature, we, meaning the church, will tell you what this scripture means.
Right.
And you don't need to question that. This is the stand of the church on this topic. And, for those of us who approach our faith from the other end of the spectrum, sometimes we have a hard time even getting our head around how that functions, what that means.
Well, and that's, I think, kind of a synopsis of our denomination in the sense that we operate from bottom up more than top down.
Absolutely.
Both theologically and in a structural sense.
Yeah. Which is hard for some people to get a handle on, because how does the church function? And most, if they come from denominationally highly organized tradition, there's always a higher authority, but in our tradition, the highest authority is the board chair.
Yeah. Or the congregation itself.
The congregation,
yeah.
because there's no one external to the congregation that can dictate to a congregation how to function.
So the joke I say is we serve at the pleasure of the congregation.
Absolutely. Now, I'll be frank, there are lots of times clergy, especially if they have been misused or abused by a congregation, wish that we had a book of order, some kind of document of, and it would have to be within our tradition, covenantal, meaning that we all agree to abide by it.
Right.
But when there is a problem, here are the rules. These are the steps. These are the processes you go through when you have an issue with your clergy, or clergy when you have an issue with your congregation. We have no such thing.
No such thing.
And so it's kind of a Wild West show periodically.
A little bit, yeah. It can, particularly if you're a minister or an employee of the church, it can be interesting when you go from one congregation to the other, because how they choose to handle problems can be drastically different sometimes.
Yeah. And let's face it, even churches that are pretty highly structured, it's still going to depend on how your laity function, how your committees function.
Do they function?
Do they function?
That can be a real question sometimes.
Absolutely. There have been congregations where the best thing you can hope for is a dysfunctional committee that doesn't do anything. It's kind of like the old saying about one of our previous governors in Texas. He never did anything, but he never screwed anything up either. Sometimes inaction's the best you can hope for.
It's like nothing got broke today, so actually it was a good day.
That's right. That's right.
There's some truth to that.
So, we wandered far afield from the start, but I think we're still looking at the idea of faithful resourcing of the individual, faithful resourcing of the church, and how that interacts and interfaces.
And I think, we were talking about how sometimes people from highly structured environments have a hard time understanding how we operate. I think the conversation is kind of indicative of us having a hard time understanding, us coming from the environment that we do of, maybe smaller churches. I'm a member of a group on Facebook called Small Church Media. I don't know if you're in that or not.
Yeah.
But, my version of small churches and some of their version of small churches are drastically different. So, like we have 300 members. I'm like, you're a large church, and that's,
we only have a yearly budget for our media of $125,000.
Yeah.
We can't stretch it. What do?
Yeah. We're sitting here going, that's darn near our whole budget. Like, it's like, not quite, but close.
Absolutely.
I definitely know of churches that have larger media budgets or larger outreach budgets than we have entire budgets.
That's right. And again, it just goes to speak to the issue of what constitutes wealth, either individually or congregationally. You cannot overstate the value of the wealth of the person, the wealth of the individual, and that which they bring to the table. I was reminded earlier of an author and a book. The author was a psychologist by the name of Erich Fromm. He was from the 60s, and social psychologist, sociologist. He broke away from the Freudian school of psychotherapy and went into social analysis. And one of the books he wrote was the revolution of hope toward a humanized technology, because he could look ahead and publish this in 1968, so you figure 3 years to write it and get it published. And so the middle of the 60s, he could look ahead and see that we were becoming a very technocratic society. And his theory was that it is our self-isolation that creates most of our emotional problems, and the more technocratic our society is, the worse that's going to be in terms of isolation and the incumbent difficulties of human relations.
That's interesting, because I was just listening to this lady the other day. I think she's a therapist or something, but she was talking about the reduction in what she termed micro interactions, because now people walk around with their headphones in all the time. And so, you know, if they're walking down the street or if they're sitting on the subway or whatever, they don't have these just, hi, how are you?
Yeah.
You know, generic interactions anymore, because everybody's just absorbed in their phone or absorbed in their earbuds or what, you know, they don't. And there goes our camera. That was faster than normal. We had just crossed 25 minutes. But anyway, we'll just finish up on the audio part. But they're so absorbed into either their phone or whatever they're listening to that it has reduced the number of micro interactions that people experience throughout the day.
That's why I have always preferred face-to-face committee meetings. God, can't we do this by email? Can't we do it by a group call or a group text? No, because you miss the human interaction. You miss those micro reactions. You miss the symbiotic nature of coming together as people.
When it's interesting to me how often that can we do it as email is couched in terms of this is faster, and it almost never is faster.
Because it creates its own set of problems.
Yes.
You can't pick up the inflection of a voice in the verbiage of an email or a text.
Right. Well, I mean, if you're in person, if you say, hey, I want to do this, let's go do this, and you get 8 people nodding their head, you're like, okay. But then, you know, on email, you send it out and you've got to get 8 different responses. You know, it just, you know, and then people reply to you instead of replying to all. And so then you answer them, then nobody else sees the answer. And it's just stupid problems. But it's like, you know, the idea that this is somehow faster than the 5 minutes it would have taken us to sit down and talk about it.
You know, well, we can finish this in a minute or go to something else.
Oh, well, we can go ahead and wrap this up since we're audio only, and then we'll take a break while the camera cools off.
Okay.
Well, thank y'all for joining us today, and we'll wrap this one up here, and we'll, I don't want to say we'll pick back up. We'll start a new episode when the camera cools off, or new topic, whatever we want to term that as.
We will see you on the other side. Thank you very much.
Hope you have a great day.
Thank you for joining us today for this episode of Mulling It Over. I hope that you found something meaningful and beneficial to take with you.
If you have any questions or topics you would like to hear us discuss, you can either put them down in the video comments or you can email them to us at office@irvingnorthcc.org.
As always, we want to invite you to join us for worship every Sunday morning, 11 o'clock a.m. at Irving North Christian Church, 2602 Texas Drive, Irving, Texas. May God bless.